Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a genuinely staggering tactical military simulation drawn directly from our sources. We're totally bypassing the politics today to focus entirely on the sheer, uncompromising mathematics of modern warfare. We're going to look closely at the actual mechanics of perfectly synchronized destruction and how militaries manage to coordinate all of this over just massive distances.
Okay, let's just dive into this. Here's our mission briefing for today. We'll be covering 1. Anatomy of a simultaneous strike. 2. Mastering time on target. 3. Blinding the enemy radars. 4. Executing the 3 waves. And 5. The strategic fallout.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Simultaneous Strike and Coordinated Devastation. So our source material lays out this highly detailed hypothetical scenario set on February 28, 2026. It examines 2 massive offensives, Israel's Roar the Lion and the U.S.'s Operation Epic Fury. And I want you to notice the phrasing right at the center of the strategy, a perfectly synchronized, overwhelming assault. In this simulation, heavily fortified Iranian targets, we're talking critical hubs across Tehran, Karaj, Qom, Kermanshah, and Isfahan, are struck. But here's the thing. The operation doesn't just roll across the country slowly, picking off targets one by one. No, the simulation details how these deeply protected zones, including the absolute nerve center in Tehran's Jamhari district, are hit entirely simultaneously. It's designed to be this total systemic shock that shatters any illusion of safety all at once. And honestly, this just brilliantly illustrates the immense geographic scale required to actually stage an operation like this. You have the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group positioned way down in the Arabian Sea. You've got the USS Gerald R. Ford up in the Eastern Mediterranean. And on top of that, you have Israeli jets navigating a grueling 930 to 1,240-mile flight path just to reach the airspace, which of course requires incredibly complex air refueling over neighboring countries. We are talking about massive launch platforms separated by literally thousands of miles. So you really have to ask yourself, how exactly do they manage to make all their weapons strike the targets at the exact same second? Section 2, Mastering Time on Target and the Mathematical Symphony. And this right here is the absolute core focus of today's explainer, time on target, or TOT. It's basically the military tactic of mathematically choreographing different munitions, launched from completely different locations, to strike a target at the exact same second. Think of it like a giant, deadly symphony. Here's how it actually works in practice. Military planners don't start with the launch time. They actually work backward. They establish the exact second of impact first, then they calculate the highly distinct flight time of every single weapon, and only then do they assign these rigid, perfectly synchronized launch windows. Every single weapon is timed so that when they finally do impact, they create an instant, inescapable wave of devastation. Let's put this into perspective to see how it builds in reality. On one hand, you have a submarine-launched Tomahawk cruise missile. Now, this weapon travels at subsonic speeds, literally hugging the ground in what's called a nap-of-the-earth flight to stay below the radar horizon. On the other hand, you have a B-2 stealth bomber dropping heavy payloads from extremely high altitudes. Because these 2 platforms travel at vastly different speeds and are firing from entirely different distances, planners absolutely have to use that working backward math to bridge the gap. The crazy complex calculations required to make sure that a slow, low-flying cruise missile just kind of loiters in the air long enough so that it, along with a gravity-dropped stealth bomb, impact Karaj and Isfahan at the exact same millisecond. It is nothing short of staggering. Moving on to Section 3, blinding the enemy radars and setting the trap. But, perfect timing is completely useless if the weapons just get shot down before they reach their targets, right? So we really have to ask, why did the top-tier air defenses fail to activate in this scenario? We are talking about highly sophisticated, deeply integrated networks, including homegrown Iranian Bavar batteries and advanced Russian-supplied S-300 and S-400 systems. How on earth do perfectly timed munitions slip past networks that were designed specifically to stop them? Well, the answer lies in multi-domain electronic warfare. The sources note that the U.S. military operates in a totally different technological league here. They coordinate an electronic assault simultaneously from space, down to the sea, and right into the air. Let that sink in for a second. A synchronized digital attack across 3 entire domains all at once. By utilizing advanced cyber operations to inject false data directly into the enemy's radar screens, they can achieve complete and total suppression of those top-tier air defense systems. It's like turning the lights out on the entire country. And to actually hunt those blinded systems down, they set a literal trap.
planners launch hundreds of ADM-160 Mauds. Now, these are miniature air-launched decoy drones. But to a panicked radar operator who's staring at a chaotic screen, these tiny drones perfectly mimic the radar signature of a massive squadron of F-15s or F-16s screaming toward the capital. It's a phantom fleet, and by chasing those ghosts, the door is kicked wide open, allowing the actual fifth-generation stealth fighters like the F-35 and F-22 Raptors to slice through the airspace completely undetected.
Section 4. Executing the 3 waves and a calculated dismantling.
With the defenses completely blinded, the military planners logically sequence the attack to systematically tear down what's left of the infrastructure. The simulation outlines 3 deliberate, highly sequential phases. Wave 1 targets the surface-to-air missile sites, radar installations, and air defense headquarters. You have to blind the eyes and silence the command and control first. Then, Wave 2 shifts focus to destroying ballistic missiles in their launchers, effectively removing the enemy's immediate ability to retaliate. Finally, Wave 3 goes after the military manufacturing industries, crippling the long-term industrial war machine. Let's actually map out the pacing here, because it's incredibly precise. At 0 hours, it all begins with robotic precision. Dozens of Tomahawks strike those radars from the sea, literally carving out safe corridors in the sky. Then, just 30 minutes past the hour, the silver bullets of the U.S. Air Force, the B-2 Spirits, are already deep inside hostile airspace, hitting those deeply buried nuclear bunkers. Then, 2 hours past the hour, just to sustain that overwhelming pressure, carrier jets launch for a mission known as DEAD, the destruction of enemy air defenses. FA-18 Super Hornets just flood the zone, actively hunting down any surviving radar operators who are foolish enough to turn their systems back on. Now, I want you to consider this staggering number, 19. That is the exact number of JNAMs, or precision-guided bombs, that a single F-15E Strike Eagle can carry. The simulation refers to these jets as the bomb trucks of the operation. And honestly, that term is no exaggeration. It is absolute lethality. While the stealth bombers are busy hitting the deep bunkers, pairs of these heavy payload F-15s are using their onboard radars to hunt mobile targets, like ballistic missile convoys trying to hide in the valleys. They drop massive payloads, link up to mid-air tankers to refuel, and go right back in for a second sortie. It's relentless. Finally, Section 5, the strategic fallout and Operation Truthful Promise 4. Because, a simulation of this magnitude doesn't just end when the bombs stop falling. Shifting to an impartial analysis of the aftermath, the source material notes that the prime target's compound was completely leveled. The reports conflict on whether Ayatollah Khamenei slipped away or was confirmed dead. But regardless of the target's fate, the military response was immediate. The scenario details this massive wave of retaliatory strikes launched at U.S. and allied bases in the Middle East under what's called Operation Truthful Promise 4, and the regional fallout is immense. In the UAE, the Al Dhafra air base was hit, leaving 1 dead from shrapnel. In Bahrain, the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters was directly targeted. In Qatar, air defenses had to actively wipe out incoming missiles. And across Israel, massive mid-air interceptions lit up the skies over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as sirens blasted nationwide. Basically, because of that initial strike, almost everyone in the region became an open target. Which really brings us to a profound question to leave you with today. In a world of perfectly synchronized, overwhelming technology, just how fragile is modern geopolitical stability? When military forces can mathematically calculate a time on target across thousands of miles to completely collapse a regime's defenses in a single, perfectly timed second, the terrifying effectiveness is undeniable. But, as the cascading region-wide retaliations in this simulation clearly show, the consequences are equally immediate and deeply devastating. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and keep questioning.